Hello, BookTube. I'm coming to you with another of my never-ending top 10 lists or top lists of fill in the blank. Now, I was asked to do one, or it was suggested I do one, which was very dangerous, this topic, and I had to keep it at 30. It's explorers slash travelers, more on the explorer side than travelers. And I'm splitting this up into three bouts of 10, three sections of 10. And again, they're all in date of birth for everyone. And now there's so many. And I'm sure somebody will say, oh, why didn't I put so-and-so on here? Well, these are all explorers that I can remember bits about and that I've read. And this is the key, that I have read a portion of their works. There are other explorers that I've not read anything of their works. I know about them. I've read them. I've read about them in books, but I've not read their works. So those are not on here. And then there's all these other explorers that I know that I've read about, but they've never actually published anything. Their works have not been published. There are many of those as well. There's a couple on here that you might then say I've broken those specific rules I've just said. We'll get to those, and I'll sort of explain why, because they have published something. Let's put it that way, but we'll get to those. So, as I say, we'll start out with the first 10, and the first one might be contentious. People say, well, he wasn't an explorer. Well, explorer slash traveler, he did travel around and wrote about things, and that is Herodotus. The birth date I have is like circa 484 BC to circa 424 BC. So I don't know exactly. He was born somewhere in Anatolia, I think it was. And I don't need to talk too much about him. I think everybody knows Herodotus, so-called father of history. He wrote about the Persian Wars, but he also traveled around and took the stories that were talked about at the time, and put them in, and criticized by, that he's telling tall tales and stuff like that. But it's eminently fascinating, and I enjoy it. And I'm way overdue for a reread, and I would love to have the landmark edition of it. Apparently the translation isn't the best, but it's the extras that are the good part. Okay, let's move on, and we're going to move on for almost 1,500 plus years later. And yes, there are lots of other explorers in between, and there's published material, and there's a few, but there was none that sort of jumped out at me in between here. So again, and that is Marco Polo, 1254 to 1324. Again, somebody that's overdue to read. Well, probably all these are. I should delve back, and I would love to reread every one that's on this list. But Marco Polo, Venetian with his family, father, and I think uncle, walked to basically China, stayed there for a while, and actually was sort of traveled around the area as a diplomat type for the government there of the time. Came back many years later, and there is the travels of Marco Polo. I've read I think it was the Penguin. That's the only one I've read. I think twice is the Penguin edition. I'd love to read the full unexpurgated, but I don't know if there really is anything that exists about that. So, but yeah, so that's one. Some of these are going to be very brief because they're very well known people, so I don't need to put too much description for these. Next one is a few hundred years later, Samuel de Champlain, 1567 to 1635. He set up in his early sort of days, I think, set up on Florida. I think something in Florida. I'm not too sure of that, but he Quebec City in what was modern day Canada is the sort of what I know him from, that he set up sort of the settlement there, and which became Quebec City. And then he sort of explored further west into Canada and the Great Lakes. And there's a lot of ethnographical information regarding the Huron Indians. He visited many villages throughout. I excavated on one of them that I believe he would have visited at some time in Ontario. That was my first field school in archaeology. And I remember I really liked reading his descriptions of the Huron and everything else, like the flora, the fauna, and everything. But I remember the one thing that sort of stands out is that I think it was like, I forget how many miles away, if they're sort of I guess downwind of a village, you could smell it. I remember that. So, and then we go to Daniel Defoe, 1660 to 1731. Now, he's well known, mostly probably known for Robinson Crusoe. However, probably since 2020, his Journal of the Plague Year is sort of, I think, probably resurfaced, which is a fascinating read. I reread it again during that time, like a very slow reread. And I really enjoy it. Like, it's in the first person, but he was a little too young for the time. But it's really good. And just dozens and oodles, technical term, oodles, of other books, fiction and nonfiction. And one of the nonfiction ones, and I'm not going to get the title correct here, so I do apologize. I'm not going to sort of search it up here. But he did a tour around the British Isles, basically. And you'll say, well, that's not exploration. Well, technically not, but it's travel. So travel is in the title here, exploration/travel. So, and it's just fascinating because it's late 1600s. And then there's another one, not the next one, but the one after that is a neat sort of companion to this, I would say. Not same stuff, but it's just, well, anyway, we'll get to it. So yeah, that is a fabulous one. There's many editions. There's a Penguin edition that I've read. I don't know if I have. I'd like to get a really good hardcover edition. I do have the Folio Society edition, which I don't think is complete. I don't think it's complete, but it's beautifully illustrated. But I don't think it's complete. The next is James Cook, Captain Cook, 1728 to 1779. Again, somebody very famous. I've shown a 2-volume set, which it's not the complete, like, I don't think, of his material. I think actually, Folio Society did put out a really nice edition of everything, I think, of his. And of course, he's sort of known for getting killed. It was in the Pacific somewhere. In 1779, he was killed doing a little bit of shenanigans stuff. And then coming to the one that Daniel Defoe that I referenced, which is a bit later, is William Cobbett's William Cobbett's Rural Rides. It's called 1763 to 1835. Fascinating. And again, like I've shown the 2 volumes that I have, which I think are more complete, but may still not be fully complete. Now, I've only read the Penguin edition of this, which I am convinced is a cut-down version of his rides. But he goes through a whole bunch of counties on horse, and it's fascinating read. But as I say, I do really need to read the 2 volumes that I have, or maybe even get a more complete, if that's not complete. I haven't done that much research into it to look it up. But again, it's sort of, if I do, when I get around to reading these, it'll be Daniel Defoe and Cobbett, probably Defoe first and then Cobbett, just because it's the British Isles. Again, not exploration per se, but traveling around. Next is a Scotsman, Mungo Park, 1771 to 1806. He was sort of, he's the one that was trying to find in West Africa. Sorry, I'm getting confused here by direct. Yeah, West Africa. to find the sort of source of the Niger River, and he sort of thought the Niger River and the Congo River were one and the same or connected. I forget his whole sort of combination of this, but he also traveled other places. But it's just, it's a slim book, his exploration book, but just really, really good. And there are other explorers at the time. There's what's his name? I should have put down, because there's an Arab explorer that was way before him that is really good. But again, it's because I haven't read a complete translation of their writing, a lot of these. So I've only read snippets of stuff, and so those I sort of didn't put in, but there are many others. Ibn Battuta, I think it is. Is that? I'm sorry, faulty memory, but I'm thinking that could be who I'm thinking of. The sort of same area, the Saharan Timbuktu area. Okay, then we move to the New World with Lewis and Clark, Meriwether Lewis, 1774 to 1809, and William Clark, 1770 to 1838. Now, I'm classing these as one explorer. They're not, but they did stuff in tandem. And this is like the early 1800s, after the Louisiana Purchase, and it was sort of to go out and map cross the area. There was a whole bunch. It wasn't just them. There was a whole crew, I guess you would say, that were doing this, and it was to sort of show American presence in this area. So any other European powers, like the English or the French or even the Spanish, get back in there, so they wanted to show the presence of America, that it was theirs, and to map it out so they could start colonizing it, I guess you would say, or have settlers go in. And it's really, really fascinating, their writings. It's a long time since I read them, but again, it would be, if I ever had a nice, good, chunky book of theirs again, technical term again, chunky book. I definitely, I think, dig into it again. Now we're narrowing down, so we got 9 and 10 now. Johann Ludwig Burkhart, 1774 to 1817. Now he is very important for sort of the Middle East, Near East area. He traveled all through the area, and he discovered. Always it was always. Never existed until European discovered it. Dutch, I think it was, yeah. It slipped my mind. Petra, and he traveled a whole bunch of other places as well. His early travels were, it had something to do, again, with Mungo Park, with Niger River, and I don't think he ever got to there, but I think he was on that kind of expedition, and he went to Timbuktu and Sahara area as well. I don't know if he actually wrote about those, because I've never read anything. I've only read his in Syria travels and Petra, and he was his writings were almost a guidebook for somebody else who will come up. Yes, probably, in the next 10. So I won't mention who that is. You probably can guess. And then we end on Hester Stanhope, or Stanhope, not Stanhope, Stanhope, 1776 to 1839. She was an archaeologist. She excavated at Ascalon. She excavated, and she was using what would be more or less termed as modern excavation techniques, if I remember right. And she was traveling around the Middle East. Cairo area and some of the Sudan. Very interesting stuff. And I don't think she published anything while she was alive, because if I remember right, there was a sort of a mysterious death with her. I think she died sort of in harness, exploring. I think she was one of. She was. I think at times she was trying to find. I think the source of the Nile as well, which is coming up like this month on many times and in many of these explorers here. And I believe her journals or her travel diaries, however you want to call them, were published all posthumously. But again, I'm not delving deep into these and researching, and it's just my faulty memory. So I do apologize if I am saying anything different. I'll put down the names. Anybody wants to check out these explorers, you've got the names, you got the dates, and you can do that. And and you might find, good chance you'll find that I've misspoken something from memory. But yeah, so there's our top traveler or explorers, travelers, part 1. I'll see you next time, BookTube.